Bonsoir. It's my first time in English abroad, so I hope you will be nice with me. I'm not sure about the sound. Is it better with this mic or with the? Well, no. No. No, it's okay. Because I heard you, it was perfect, so I think it's perfect for everyone. Yes, so if you have any questions, please keep them to you for a moment. We'll have questions at the end. So I'm very thankful for the invitation. And I have one regret, is that Darwin was born in February. That's my only criticism. So we'll begin with to explore a kind of paradox. I'm sorry, I have written all my notes because I'm afraid of saying something inappropriate. So I will try it this way. No, it's okay. It's good? it's So we are going to explore a paradox. The brain is an obstacle to the comprehension of the theory of evolution, and that's strange. And it's not mysterious, and it's not a failure of intelligence. We actually know why this happens, and the explanation lies in what we can call intuitive ontologies, and I will explain what it is. Basic ways to carving up reality that are deeply embedded in the structure of our brains. And these ontologies are not arbitrary. They are the results of evolutionary history, of the human lineage, and of selective pressures that shaped us as an intensely social and highly competitive species. And as a consequence, a perfectly functional brain, even the brain of you, intelligent, educated person, can very easily malfunction when confronted to Darwinian principles. So we'll see later these four ontologies: essentialism, teleology, dualism, and anthropomorphism. So these are recurring traps that play a central role in the rejection of misunderstanding and misunderstanding of evolution. And we'll examine each of these later. And the consequence of this mismatch is that evolution is not only misunderstood, it is actively disliked, and it remains one of the most resisted scientific theories of the world. So I have a few examples of this hatred. That's unfortunate. And the paradox is even more broad than the brain. There is an intelligent paradox. Human species is known for its intelligence. We are intelligent people, but we regularly observe. Yes, I'm sorry for that. It's not my fault. Not my fault. Huh? We are regularly confronted with clear counterexamples of intelligence. Large number of people believe perfectly stupid things and reason in completely irrational ways, and we'll see that together. And I have one question for you. Why do intelligent people often believe bullshit? There are a lot of answers, social answers, cultural, but there is also a psychological and cognitive factors, the cognitive biases. So we'll not go in every one of them because we will need the weak, and I don't have that. So who knows what is a cognitive bias? Nobody? Perfect. So I'm not here for nothing. Cognitive biases are systematic deviations in reasoning that lead to predictable errors. So, in a sense, there are cognitive illusions, just as there are perceptual illusions. So we will see some perceptual illusions. The Lilac-Chaser spiral. So although the image is perfectly static, I assure you it is, it gives a strong impression of motion. And one of the definition of the defining features of an optical illusion is that it continues to work even when we know that the image shows something different from what we perceive. So it remains. You know that doesn't move, but that doesn't help. And I have worse. Here, the infinite regression illusion of Petertse, if it works. Yes, it does. So we have 5 dots that move exclusively vertically, up and down. But if you look at the dot on the left, then suddenly the 5 dots appear to move to the right, in an infinite motion to the right, like democracies in our century. And that infinite motion is entirely impossible, and yet you can see it. So when you look at the dot here, you perceive an impossible motion. Okay? And you still here with me? Okay. It's not so. C'est pas grave. Ça n'est pas grave. It's not aussi good. So the perceptual illusions in our environment, the thing our brain is most inclined to perceive, analyze, and understand is the human face. So that's fine, but it's not pas grave non plus. And because of this remarkably powerful specialization, we tend to see faces everywhere. And very easy, 2 dots and a curved line, and you can see a smiley, which is a face, another face, and another. So these are very rudimentary faces, but they are faces. You can perceive them, and you are a normal person. Still, I hope. And so, we can go further than that. In these pictures there, yeah, I know. I assure you there is nothing more than a pepper, a broom, a washing machine, and an alarm clock. So everybody see that? It's okay? Yeah. But you must admit that you also see faces. They are not faces, but you see faces. So this phenomenon is a pareidolia. When you see something that is not there, it's a pareidolia. It's a Greek word, so. But there is more than just faces. Look closely. What is striking is that each of us perceive exactly the same thing, even though it's not possible. The pepper is hungry. The broom is grumpy. The washing machine is looking sick, and the alarm clock is sad. Perhaps it's late, I don't know. So we all attribute emotions to things that we know cannot have emotions. And again, we are perfectly normal people. Except, no. So, without being under the influence of alcohol or other substances, at least I speak for myself, we see things that are not normal, and you understand that this is an error. This is a big mistake. Feeling that a pepper is angry is a big mistake. Very big. So, we are far from reality, and yet we share the same perceptions. So we are wrong together. That's reassuring. But there is even more. One last level of intuitive error. Let me introduce you with this photograph. This is Isabelle. Isabelle is a tomato. And Isabelle. You see that Isabelle is a tomato, but you see also a face. First error, there is no face. When you look at Isabelle, you can attribute emotion to her. We can see that Isabelle is very sad. Okay? This is an error. I have studied plant physiology. That's the only moment where my specialty is pertinent. Fruits and vegetables are never sad. Okay? This is an error. But if you look closely at Isabelle, this harmless tomato to whom I have given a name, and for whom you begin to feel compassion, you feel sad for her. There is a war in Ukraine, but you feel sad now for a tomato. And you probably shouldn't. But we do all feel the same thing. And when you begin to feel compassion for a fruit or for a vegetable, it is an error. Okay? But we make the same errors. And so these are illusions. These are perceptual illusions. And because of that, we tend to see things that are not there, because of perceptual illusions, and because of cognitive illusions, we arrive at conclusions that seem logical to us but are not. And so we take 3 examples of cognitive illusions. Just after I have a little coup. Huh? here is French or speak French? Merci beaucoup. And for all the others, I'm so sorry. Well, so some examples of cognitive illusions. The first, the availability bias. Who knows that? So I feel useful when you don't know things. That's great. So all is written. Our judgment about the probability of an event or the credibility of a claim is influenced by the number of examples that comes easily to mind. That is, the examples are readily available in memory. And so we tend to remember the plane crashes because they are big events, dramatic events, and therefore to overestimate how often they occur. So be reassured, the plane is the safest. Second cognitive illusion, the mere exposure effect. It's the tendency to prefer something just because we have been exposed to it repeatedly. The advertisement works like that, even without any conscious interaction with it. And because I'm French, I come with a French example. When we are exposed to things, we tend to like it, even if we shouldn't like it. This is a rapper, I don't know. Well. Okay, the third one, the survivorship bias, that's my favorite one. We attribute the success of a strategy to the salient traits shared by those who succeed, the visible cases, the survivors, while neglecting those who failed and disappeared from the analysis. And the classic example of that is the British airplanes during the Second World War. About 50% of them didn't return to base, so they were shot. And in order to reduce losses, it was decided to reinforce the most vulnerable parts of the plane with armor. But if we armor everything, it's a little too heavy, so we must be scarce. So to do so, engineers recorded the bullets' impacts on the aircraft, shown here in red, and they plan to reinforce those specific areas. Okay, with everybody? No, that should be a mistake. The red dots show where a plane can be hit and can make it to the base. If we reinforce only the red places, we forget that the plane where the engines exploded or where a bullet goes through the head of the pilot didn't come back. So the dead ones were forgotten in this graph. So we need to remember that we only have a sample of reality in order to alleviate some very bad decisions. This would have been a very bad decision. So because of perceptual illusion and cognitive illusions, we make predictable errors. And that is very important. We are manipulable because these cognitive biases are universal. Everybody has it. Almost everybody in every culture, almost. So the question is why? We have a very big brain, very costly brain, and we think, we reason like that. Why do evolution does such shitty work? Forgive my French. So, in fact, cognitive biases are not flaws in the brain, nor are they evidence of that human think poorly, but they're simply an indication that we hold mistaken assumptions about what the brain is doing when we think we are thinking. Because during the evolution, these biases were useful, in fact. They are heuristics, they are mental shortcuts, and they produce responses that were well adapted to the lives of the people that were here before and who passed them to us. And for instance, in this photograph, you can see that there is sometimes in the life you must decide quickly what to do. And so these biases are here for that. They generate fast responses, they reduce complexity, they cope with uncertainty, and they rely on information that is statistically useful in everyday environment. So in context, where decisions are to be made quickly, with limited information and high stakes, these shortcuts were not only efficient, they were vital, and I can show you that. Are you okay? Are you ready?
Yes.
Me too. So, why does the brain see things that are not there? I will take you to a journey 100 million years ago in our evolutionary tree, where our great mother, Eomaya, this little thing about the size of a squirrel, a little thing, lived in the same time as the ancestors of the chickens. These things, these huge creatures. And so our ancestors lived in a world full of dangers, and were all the time, in French we say flippé, very flippé, very stressed and very for a good reason. So in such an environment, some judgments are more likely than others to keep an individual alive. So we take that in a table. We compare reality with perceptions in situation of danger or no danger. And so we have 4 situations. It's very simple. Okay? If there is no danger, and if I perceive no danger, there is no story. Nothing to do. If there is no danger, but I perceive a danger, I experience a false alarm. Oh, I overreact, I drop my sandwich, okay? But there's not serious outcomes about that, okay? Now let's see the second case. There is danger, and I see the danger. Then I adopt the appropriate behavior. I run away, I freeze, I fight, or I release noxious gases. I don't judge anyone. It's okay. Everyone has their own strategy. And if I perceive nothing when there is a danger, then I am in trouble. Okay? So our table illustrates 2 major types of error, the false positive and the false negative. And the false positive has little consequences, and the type 2 error, the false negative, failing to detect a danger that is actually here, can be fatal. And that has consequences in Darwinian terms. Here is Charles with his phone. Why? So false negatives error leads to the elimination in the game of evolution. Too bad. While false positive errors, it's too bad. And the false positive error is like being like Rincewind. Do you know Rincewind, the character by Terry Pratchett? It's a writer, English writer. So, Rincewind is a very bad, a very terrible wizard. He sucks. But he is fearful of everything, and he runs fast. So he survives through all the novels. He stays alive. And so, because he makes the false positive assumption that there is a danger when there is not, he stays alive and he makes a good ancestor. He is a good Darwinian character. And so that's it. Natural selection has eliminated, generation after generation, the genes of individuals that make the false negative error. And so we have the descendant of those who tended to see dangers and agents where, in fact, there was nothing, because they make more offsprings. And so we are all a little paranoid, and that's not our fault, that's the consequence of that. Okay. So it's okay to be paranoid, a little. And so we can answer the brain paradox now. The brain paradox has an explanation. The brain's job is to keep us alive, and being right is only one way, among others, to achieve that. Being right is the luxury of our time. So I'm going back to, sorry, I forget a sentence. Evolution did not give us a brain designed to understand evolution. Haha, and that's the whole problem. Well, whatever. So I now return to our intuitive ontologies, and I explain what it is. Intuitive ontologies are our spontaneous capacity to classify the objects in our environment, shaped by the way humans naturally interact with the world. And so they allow for an efficient interaction with the environment. And so the babies use them all the time. And so we love to classify things. And biologists among them, we love to classify things. And we spontaneously sort things into categories. One box for artifacts, one box for natural objects. Within that, there is a special box for the animals, for the plants, and there's one box for human, because it's very important for us. That's the most important part of our environment. And sometimes we make some mistakes. This is a pepper, but it looks like human. And so it's important to have this mindset in order to classify things and to react quickly. And babies use all these ontologies. Before any formal instruction, they understand part of the environment because they possess a naive physics. So they understand object permanence, trajectories, state of matter. They have a naive biology. Living beings are born, they grow, they reproduce. They have a naive psychology. They understand the other's mental states through what is called the theory of mind, which is acquired by the age of 4 or 5. And they also have a naive sociology. That's a grasp of social roles and context-dependent behaviors. So we do not have to teach them that. They understand that quite by themselves because it's intuitive. But the problem is that naive mode of knowledge remains approximate and proves inadequate for a scientific approach. That's why read a graph is not that easy, in fact. And even if you understand the graph that shows that Alzheimer's disease, the prevalence is going up, you might understand that that's a bad news. And in fact, it's good news. It's because we get older. So it's good news. And it's difficult to understand homology between the limbs in different species. And because it's difficult, we need science. That's the job. And so when Darwinian biology enters the scene, and there is a little movie, it's too long for me, but I'll show you the first images. Biology and living and life sciences explain living systems through microscopic processes inside cells with proteins and phospholipids and so on, in microscopic level, and unfolding of a geological time scale, and we cannot cognitively understand that. It's not possible. We can figure that we can, but in fact, no, we cannot. But we have illusions. And so our intuitive ontologies, fully adapted to a world of medium size in time and in space, resist. They become what we call epistemic obstacles. And that's the point of what I'm going to tell you about our 4 horsemen, and that's it, we are here, the 4 intuitive ontologies. Are you still with me? Yes. Am I clear enough?
Yes.
Let's go, because these words are very difficult to say in English. Probably. Okay? So, let's begin with essentialism. The belief that things have an immutable inner essence, and so our brain, like boxes, I told you, and we think there is an essence of cat that makes cat a cat, sort of catness. And same for dogs, there's dogness. We like boxes, and we know that each of these boxes exists because cats do not make dogs. We know that. There are different species, and we like that. But the word species was there before Darwin. So we tend to think a species is a fixed eternal category, and in fact, the word was there before. It comes from an era when we know nothing about evolution, and the species, in fact, does not exist. I'm sorry. Species, in fact, is a segment of a flux of generation. So in evolution, there is no boxes. There is only a flow of change. And because of essentialism, we accumulate flawed intuitions about nature and about what evolutionary theories does and does not say. And one of the illusions is that of discontinuity. We develop an illusion of discontinuity between living things and non-living things, between species, which prevent us from perceiving evolutionary relatedness. relatedness. That's why it's not so easy to understand what is that the bird is the dinosaur, why the plesiosaurus is not a dinosaur. I'm sorry, but that's the case. Plesiosaurus and pterodactyls are not dinosaurs, okay? But birds are. And so evolution implies continuity between non-living and living, and that comes with a cost, because that undermines our human exceptionalism. No, we are not. Our moral uniqueness, there is moral in the nature, and our metaphysical privilege, I have no opinion about that, but in fact, if we resist to evolution, that's also because of that. There's another illusion, that of the missing link. Who here believes that there is a missing link somewhere? Thank you. Nobody? Thank you. Because missing c'est de la merde. Hein? Well, we have become obsessed with the missing link because we believe that evolution must be composed of clearly reified stages, but a species is just a linguistic and scientific convention, a way of describing a continuous flow of generation. What did I say? Yes, and a population of individuals without sharp boundaries. So this comes from a book by a French such as Guillaume Lecointre. I recommend you this book if they exist in English, because in French, that's the best. But in English, you have also some good things, I'm sure. So. The third problem is the Plato heritage, the perfect categories. We inherited from Plato the belief that in perfect categories, of which real organisms are merely instances. So we believe that rabbits exist somewhere, and that the real rabbits are just shadows of the real rabbits, and that's silly, of course. And we should know better because the platypus was there. So categories were blown, okay? We know that, we know that. Then, that's for essentialism. Is it clear? So I go to the worst, the teleological bias. Is that the good way? Theological? The tendency to assign a goal or a function to every natural phenomenon, so like the neck of the giraffe. And so we instinctively look for purpose everywhere. So children spontaneously say that, that the sun shines so that plants can grow, which is true, but no. Huh? And in a sense, we all are born teleologists because that's the way we comprehend things. But nature does not have intentions or goals until proven otherwise, of course. And so there is a trap in the language. We often hear the giraffe has a long neck to reach high leaves. So it's true, but no, again. Because the real way to say is giraffes with longer necks survived because they could reach higher leaves, okay? And even that is not for, well, the long neck of the giraffe may require a more complex explanation than that, maybe because in part, perhaps, long neck is super sexy. And that just, giraffes see another, ooh, we have a long neck. And because it's sexy, it makes more offsprings, and being able to grasp the leaves is just a byproduct. I'm not sure of that, but it's more complicated than just they have this character because they wanted to do something. So we often compare Darwin with Lamarck in France, and we call Lamarckian theological the fact that we think that characters were fixed because there was an intention, but in fact Darwin thought the same thing sometimes. So the opposition is shitty. So it's not the fault of the French in this case. It's not our fault. We also are Darwinian, in fact, more than Darwin. Well, and the ladder trap is the problem that we look at evolution retrospectively. From the tip of our branch in the tree of life, the path that we went through appear evident, clear, linear, and inevitable, because we interpret it backward. And we think of it like a progress. And so look, the man is man, not woman. The man, because the woman, man is in the top of the tree of life, of course. So this intuition of we are at the end of the story is reinforced by historical representation, just like the Scala, no. Yeah, the Scala Naturae, and this actual tree of life, which is an old one, of course, where everything is simplified, and where everything tells us, you are special. And you are special, but not that way. Okay? So that's for the theological bias. Is it clear? The third one is a dualism. So I'm not speaking of philosophical, but of psychological dualism, which is the intuition that the mind is fundamentally separate from the body. And from a very early age, we, as humans, we learn to interact with psychological objects, others people, emotions, desires, intentions, and plans. And these mental states act effectively in the world. And so we treat them as real causal entities, and we are right. But as a result, we tend to ground them in autonomous existence, and that is unwise, I think. So that's the root of intuitive dualism. And of course, this dualism has also an existential aspect, because if we are just biology, if you are just a sack of proteins and biomolecules, maybe you feel less special. Not to me, but maybe you can feel less special. And so there is an emotional rejection of Darwinism because people want to be more than just flesh and blood. That's not why. And if the mind itself becomes a product of evolution, maybe we lose something. We lose a sacred sense of existence, and that's why we struggle to accept that love, faith, and consciousness are biological processes shaped by natural selection. So there are a lot of debates about that, and I like this kind of debates, but people are... I'm tired of that. And Darwin knew it because he wrote about about emotions in animals and humans. And so this discomfort when we learn that science can explain a little of that, explain why we are so resistant to the evolutionist psychology. Maybe you know it. In France, I don't know how it is here. In France, a lot of people in human sciences say that evolutionary psychology is a pseudoscience. And it's not true, and I'm quite annoyed by that. Well, and the last one, anthropomorphism, is the tendency to attribute human intentions and agency to natural processes. So we tend to personify nature around us. We call her Mother Nature, because we want her to be gentle with us. Mother Nature, which is wise and purposeful. We say things like evolution finds a way, as if evolution were an agent with plans and intention. And this way of speaking makes nature easier to talk about, but much harder to understand. So we should avoid that, but we cannot avoid that. So the illusion of agency arises when we encounter complex structures. We instinctively look for a who or a why, rather than a how. And science explains the how. How? Is that a good? Comment? How? And so this intuition underlies classic arguments such as the Pelly watch. You know it. It dates from old debates about God, which are over now. No? And William Pelly argued that if, I spoiled everything. Pelly argued that if we find a watch on the ground, on a beach, we immediately infer a designer. Because he claimed that because obviously these things cannot arise by itself. And he says that for animals and plants, that's the same thing. And we know that it's not because Darwin. But so this tendency is with us, and this old argument is still in use today. because people sometimes are stupid, sometimes. And this tendency to personify nature is probably at the root of major cultural phenomena just as religion. And if you want a conference about religion, I can do it next year. But I have to practice before. And when we look at this paint by Michelangelo of Adam and God, some people say that when we look at the figure of God painted in his drapery, that resembles the shape of a human brain. As if the artist were hinting that God is just a product of our mind, of our intelligence. So, either it's true, and it's fascinating that Michelangelo wanted to say that to us, or it is not true, and we have here a pareidolia, which does the same impression. So it's okay for me. So the two ways it's okay for me, but it's quite funny. So I'm not sure. If someone has the answer about that theory, that hypothesis, I'm quite interested. But anyway, if it's true or false, it's a good story. So I keep it. So these are the four horsemen of misunderstanding of evolution. So I have a question for you. How do you feel when you are wrong compared to when you are right? And it may seem true, but the feeling here is very important. So I will tell you how myself I feel. When I am right, I'm here, and I feel good about being right. When I'm wrong, I'm here, and I feel good because I believe I'm right. So the feeling is the same. So maybe the feeling is not of any help. But if I'm wrong, and you tell me I'm wrong, and I understand you, okay, I change my mind, so I'm right. In this room today, everybody has ideas in his head. Some are right, others are wrong, and nobody knows which are which. And but if you know which one are your ideas that you believe are wrong, tell me. You know. So the feeling that we feel of certainty is poorly correlated to veracity. So the feeling does not help. So our brain does not tell us when he knows something truly. So it's very important. So why? Because our brain is an energetically costly organ, and it operates by default as a cognitive miser. It does not want to spend too much energy on anything. So it relies primarily on what we call a system 1 mode of reasoning, which is fast, approximate, statistically efficient, but largely blind to its own errors. And so we have to make an effort to go to the system 2 mode, which is rational, or we hope, but not always, because system 2 has an urgent will to say to system 1, you're right. So we have to discipline ourselves. So the brain reaches, when a brain reaches a false conclusion, it experiences the same sense of satisfaction than when it is not a brain that reaches false conclusion experiences the same subjective sense of satisfaction as when it reaches a true one. Okay, that's the good sentence. Thank you. Bravo, Thomas. And as a result, we readily confuse cognitive ease with confidence in our conclusion. So the cognitive ease is the satisfaction we have to think about things that we are fluent with. That's easy to think. And easy to think is not equivalent to true. And when the Darwinian principles arrive, well, Darwin principles directly conflict with our intuitive ontologies and cognitive shortcuts. They force us out of our zone of cognitive comfort, and the resulting discomfort is called a cognitive dissonance. So the book written in 1957 by Leon Festinger has just been debunked recently because he lied apparently about the story, but the concept is I didn't confirm after. So I'll keep on talking about cognitive dissonance. So this discomfort that we feel, we have two ways of solving it. Either accepting the new information, or to keep believing false things and say, no, it doesn't happen, being Trump. You live in a Trump world where you are always right, and everything else is shitty, and you are very, 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 very happy. Sorry. And so, there is another language problem because, yes, this explains a lot of the reduction of the theory of evolution. But there is another one, which is the language, because the word theory. This is just a theory. Did you have heard that before? I said I've encountered this sentence in the mouth of a PhD student in my lab when I was a PhD student. And when he said that, he was very a believer. I had to leave the room because I was losing my temper. Je suis tellement gentil, mais là non. So saying this is just a theory is a very annoying attempt to argumentation because everything is a theory. And there is a different use in science and in everyday language. A theory in science is not a guess. It's a model, constructed, verified, tested, etc. And so I don't know how to explain people that theory is something serious. So that's another problem with the theory. And so because of all, I say to you, all the mental mechanisms I have presented in this lecture, they interact and reinforce one another to produce the paradox I mentioned at the outset of my talk, a highly efficient brain that nonetheless struggles to understand its own evolution. That's what I call the irony of evolution. Because nature, through Darwinian processes, has shaped an organ capable of understanding those very processes. That's incredible. But only at the cost of challenging the intuitions that were once vitally useful for its survival. So it's weird, but that's the way. So rejecting the theory of evolution is wrong, okay? It is unwise. But knowing how our minds work, that's normal. And I'm so sorry of that. And thank you for your attention.